how can I love my husband more fearlessly? And I love that question. We touched on some of those things, but let's talk about locating that fear. Welcome back to Loving Fearlessly, and I'm going to talk to you actually about some practical things so that you can locate whether you're loving fearlessly or not. So how can I love my husband more fearlessly? And I love that question. We touched on some of those things, but let's talk about locating that fear. I don't know what fear you might be wrestling with. I obviously had a fear of abandonment. I also had a fear of being left vulnerable without any provision, anybody with me. I'd be alone. I would not have provision. Those were obviously two deep-rooted fears that I must have had in there from my dad leaving and the sympathy I would have had towards my mother, like all men will leave. Don't ever trust a man. Don't ever do this. They'll hurt you. They'll hurt you. And then being afraid and not knowing how to completely love. And here's the beautiful thing about where we can rest our hearts. Because see, I can't rest my heart in John. I've been married for 37 years and I love him. I love him more now than ever, but he cannot be the holder of my heart. I have to rest my heart in the goodness of God. I have to rest my heart in the promise of God that says love never fails. Now, a lot of times we decide what that success is going to look like. If I love this, God, you have to do everything in this list I have in my box. But he is saying, no. Love never fails. It never fails. It never gives up. It believes the best. Love never fails. So no matter whether that person understands the preciousness of what you're giving them or not, God does. God understands. And God is going to always make sure that the love that you have sown is never going to fail in your life. Even if that person fails you, the love that you've sown is never going to fail because love never fails. It can't fail. And so anytime we trust our heart to love rather than try to protect our heart with fear, then we're going to have a problem. So we're going to trust our heart and love. So what I want to do is, what is yours? Mine was abandonment. Mine was a lack of provision, being afraid of being vulnerable. Maybe yours is rejection. Maybe you've been rejected in the past and you're like, I can't handle that again. I can't have another rejection. Maybe it's of losing control. I don't know what I would do if I didn't have this in my life. I need you to pause with the Holy Spirit after this session or the next time you've got pen and paper in hand and kids aren't running around, and say, what is my deepest fear? What is my deepest fear? And if you're like me and you're projecting the fear that you had gotten from your relationship with your father, your natural father, onto your husband, you need to be honest about that. And you need to go to your husband and say, I located a fear in my heart. I've been afraid that you were going to leave me. I've been afraid of releasing control in certain areas. And so I'm trying to control you because I'm afraid. Just tell him, say, I don't want this fear. I want to love you all in. I want to love you completely. Where is it? And just ask him, where is it you feel that I'm afraid to love you? Where is it where you feel like I'm not loving you well? And I know that's a scary question, but we need to be okay with that. We need to have the answer back. If my husband, when I did that, I can't get mad at him and say, well, that's not right. I had to say, all right. See, I'm going to tell you the area I was afraid to love John well in. My husband traveled and spoke. He's selling books. He's getting standing ovations everywhere. I'm like, when he comes home, I'm not saying one thing celebratory about him. When he comes home, he gets pulled down. When he comes home, he changes poopy diapers. When he comes home, that man of God, Christian author thing stays in the garage. That's how I thought, because I was like, I am not going to celebrate him because too many people are already celebrating him and he will become an egomaniac. So I'm going to withhold words of affirmation. I'm going to withhold any kind of honor with my words. I'm going to just keep that in check, and I'll keep him humble. And I remember when I asked John, how am I not loving you well? Because see, I was great at taking care of the kids. I was great at taking care of the finances. I was great at taking care of the house and managing things when he was gone. But when he came home, I did not give him words of affirmation. And he was actually so starved that he was ashamed to ask me for those things. And I remembered, I thought, why do I have to talk about you? Oh my gosh. And I realized everybody deserves to be loved the way they can hear it. But fear will shut down your ability to love other people the way they can hear it. And often we are paired with spouses that hit that thing. And so I'm going to challenge you. Honey, where does it feel like I am afraid to love? Where does it feel like I'm afraid to give to you? A lot of men like words of affirmation. A lot of men like physical touch, and a lot of women are afraid if they touch their husband, that means they're going to have sex. So what you need to say to your husband is, I've been afraid to be affectionate because sometimes I'm so tired because of my kids. Can we do affection and I not feel pressure? And usually they're like, yes. So have the conversation, and that's just another way that you can love fearlessly. So I'm going to have you locate in your prayer time, ask your husband, then guess what you get to do? Circle back. Circle back to God and say, is this right? Is this right? Because that's what I did. I was like, would Jesus say you're not talking about me enough? You're not complimenting me enough? No, Jesus would say acts of service like me. That's my love language. And God was like, you need to love fearlessly. See, it's safe to do things, but sometimes it's really scary to have an open, vulnerable conversation. So love your husbands fearlessly by having conversations that are honest with them. Next thing, how do you stay connected with children and a busy life? Well, it doesn't happen by accident. You are going to have to intentionally make this happen. One of those things is you're going to have to schedule time together. When my kids were little, I don't even know if we ever even, seriously, our life was such a blur. John and I were like, we schedule time together during the day if we're going to have sex. Because we cannot have sex at night. Why? Because we are exhausted, absolutely exhausted, and a child could walk in at any moment. So when the kids were at school or when we knew something was on, lock the door. Lock the door. Supposedly one of my sons saw stuff he shouldn't have. I don't remember it. But lock the door. So you always want to lock the door. But you're going to have to also get a regular schedule. Addison and Julie, I think they put their kids to bed every single night at 7:30 or 8. That means even if there's a little bit of a fudge time and those kids keep getting up for an hour, they have from 8:30 to 10 or 10:30 at night where just the two of them have time together. Put your kids to bed at a set time. And I know a lot of parents, it's just hard. Listen, it's hard when you first start it, but it's harder when you live in chaos. So set a bedtime. Tell everybody this is the bedtime, this is when we're going to go to bed, and this is what it's going to look like, and then stick to it. Have your husband be part of that. I know that for my husband and I, there were certain times that it was better to talk about things, not just sex, but better to talk about things. See, I kind of felt like, hey, we're finally alone in bed at night. Let's talk about everything that's troubling me. Let's talk about deep and meaningful things. And my husband would be like, I can't do that right now. I am so tired. I don't want to hear what's troubling you. I wish you would have talked to me about this in the morning or in the afternoon. So you want to talk about the right things at the right time if you're going to have the right response. So if you're going to have time, make family connections, make time for yourself. We also told our kids, hey, mommy and daddy need time. We're not just locking ourselves in the bedroom time, but we need time where they could actually see us doing something. You can put your kids and have them doing something, a project or watching a movie or building something or playing outside while the two of you have time talking together. And you're actually modeling something super important for your kids in the future, that mommy and daddy need time together and that they were actually together first. See, you and your husband were together before you had kids. And guess what? There'll be a time, like the time I'm in, when it's just the two of you together again. And I don't want you to see this time of busy childhood where you're just mom, dad, mom, dad, mom, dad. and you look at each other and you forgot who you were as husband and wife. I want to make sure that you make time for husband and wife. And maybe you're in a situation as a young mom, you're like, I don't feel like a wife anymore. I only feel like a mother. Then ask your husband if he can give you time so that you can feel like a wife. Whether that means he does homework with the kids one night and you go take a bath, or you do something, or maybe you just go out to the grocery store by yourself. That felt like a luxury to me when my boys were little. But you can do something that makes you not feel like you're just a mom. And again, I hate even putting those words together, but you're also a wife, and you're also a daughter of God, and you're also beautiful, and you're also feminine, and you're also worthy of conversation and worthy of getting to know better. So I want you to make sure you make time for that. So want to do it. And then don't feel guilty when you make time for yourself. Now, I know there's a lot of people that are all about, oh, take self-care. If you can do self-care, yay. But don't let that be just another thing on your list. Like, I'm not doing enough self-care. I'm not going to the gym enough. I'm not doing this enough. Sit down and go back, maybe even together as a couple, to the dreaming part. What does this look like? What does our dream day look like? Well, it looks like the kids go to school from here to here. You come home from work here. I come home from work here. We do dinner together as a couple. Then we do this as a couple. And then we get our kids to bed at this time. And then we have this time together where we sit on the back porch, or we just, talk. I don't know. You pick out, you dream it. You design it, which means you put people on schedule. You do it, and you don't feel guilty about it. But I do feel like right now there's a lot of pressure on women to do way too much. And often you can do certain things in certain seasons. And when my kids were little, I was like, I would tell my husband, listen, I love you, and I would really love to be intimate with you tonight, but I am just too tired. But if you can find me at 3 a.m. and I wake up and you wake up, let's go for it. So make provision for one another. Talk to each other about it. Make sure you make it a priority, because kids that think that they rule your whole life are not nice kids. And so you were here first. You'll be there together afterwards. Your kids, this is an incredible season of entrustment, but they can't take you hostage.